welcome back to another episode. We got Derek Loudermilk. Welcome to the show.
Tyler, good to be here. Good to see you.
Yes. Grateful to have you on, man. So I guess this is a more informal one, but if you want to start, tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, and then let's get to the weird.
Well, so one of the main things I do, and how we met was actually I was in one of your books, and since then I've done a bunch of books. Currently working on 3 concurrent books: a collaborative book, two solo books, one about adventure, one about transformational experiences, and I also have applied all of my expertise to my own coaching, where I take entrepreneurs. I call it quantum entrepreneurship. So moving from 3D type of step by step, here's how you do things, to quantum entrepreneurship, which is like you're doing something that's never been done, anything's possible, and here's how you sort of align your business with your own soul's purpose, your highest values, and become a thought leader, so you can really move humanity forward by leading people. So that's where I'm at these days.
Okay, this is awesome. So first, what are the 3 books? Because it is the Authors Unite show, so we can.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like I do not consider myself an author. It's when I'm at parties, I like to say I'm an author when people say, "What do you do?" Because it's the thing that most leads people to say, "Oh, tell me more." Mm-hmm. And really, I just care about a conversation, but I don't feel like a writer or an author, because people say like, "Oh, my cousin's a writer. He's been working on a book for 10 years." Like, oh, that's not me. I'm just trying to like get information out there. And so one is a book about adventure. I've been studying adventure for years now. And this is kind of like my thesis about, who are adventurers? Like, what is the identity of an adventurer? Like there's this aspect of confidence that I see in adventurers that I don't see as developed anywhere else. So it's a sort of just looking at what are the ways you can train confidence. So it's mostly adventure stories. So that's kind of cool. We've got one of these collaborative book projects, which you sort of advised me on. We're doing our 3rd volume.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So three years in, using the patented Tyler formula.
Oh, yeah. I should have patented it. No, well, there was people before me too. Actually, yeah.
So we're doing that's coaching exercises. So each chapter is a coach, and they, a lot of these coaches that you and I know, that I'm friends with, they create exercises, right, to help people have an experience or a transformation. So it's a collection of those exercises. So that's been really cool to work on, and I actually end up stealing a lot of those ideas and incorporating them into my work. So that's a really fulfilling project. And then the other one is, I just had a huge breakthrough. I was trying to cram it into the sort of nonfiction box, like 10 chapters, we're going to discuss this topic. It's about transformational experiences, but I realized, and I just finished Neil Strauss's book, one of his books called Emergency. And that's told over 60 chapters, this narrative for how he became a survivalist. And so it's about the concept of survivalism, but it's really his journey. And so I completely dismantled the original structure of the book. And, now it's going to be a 45 chapter narrative of how my own identity has collapsed and changed over the last decade or so.
Okay. Yeah. I want to get into that. And just real quick, because I haven't heard of that one by Neil Strauss. Is that new or an old book?
No, it's old. It came out in 2009.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And he right. So after 9/11 happened, he was like, oh shit, should I get out of America, or like, should I be prepared for war or what? So he got on this train of thinking, and then he taught himself, wilderness survival. He got a second citizenship in the Bahamas. No, somewhere in the Caribbean, St. Lucia, maybe. I'm not sure. He learned how to use firearms. He learned how to escape from, urban escape and evasion. He learned all these survival skills, martial arts, all these things, so that he could be prepared no matter what.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, maybe he should come out with a round 2 now. It seems like things are a little wild right now. So.
Well, I can imagine his book, people are just coming to his book and be like, oh, wow, I found it super helpful. I never grew up around firearms. And so they always kind of scared me, but I was like, it would be nice not to be scared around firearms and to sort of find them useful if I needed them. So, I'm like, okay, now I want to train and learn how to use rifles and pistols and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think that's a good thing is what I mean is because I happened to grow up around them. I was from like a small kind of farm town, Pennsylvania. So, I don't know if he wants me saying this, but my dad has some things that hold bullets in them. I'll say that. I think it's just good to just know if you need it, So, but yeah, I can imagine this. I remember when I shot my first shotgun, it was at my uncle's, and it was now I'm blank, whatever those orange like discs are, and you shoot, and dude, when
shooting skeet.
Yeah, like
I'm
when
terrible.
Dude, honestly, I thought my shoulder like popped out of my freaking arm. It's crazy.
Oh, because the kickback is.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I think I was like 12 or 11 or something.
I was shooting in Alaska one time. My ex's uncle was up there, and he was like, "Do you want to shoot the elephant gun?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to shoot the elephant gun." It's like a pistol. It shoots 50 caliber bullets, and it just came back. It's so overpowering. Very.
It's a little sketchy. Yeah, like if you, and I don't know the name, but there's one. Like a pistol, like a Magnum or something. Like you would think when you're aiming, you'd have it here, but like the pop back is so strong that like people have like hit themselves in the face.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know. That's where it gets dangerous. But so I want to ask you this. So in the 10 years thing that you just said, because I do feel just from following you on social media, and obviously we've stayed connected, but like recently I do feel like a transformation from you, like something like, so I know we're going to get into some of these things and it's all a surprise. I don't know what they are yet, but like, I do feel like the 3D to the 4D. And I think there's a coach that you had that you're very fond of. Like you sent me his information before.
Yeah. Jim Fortin.
Yeah. So like, I guess to start like in that direction, like what has evolved recently, if you were to be able to kind of hone it in, because I feel like it's a lot.
Yeah. And so this is really, timely for a lot of people, I think, because so many people are experiencing the death of who they thought they were because of this pandemic. They've lost their jobs, they've lost their ability to do the same social things, and this like shrinking down of our lives to some degree has us reevaluating all of these things. And that happened to me 7 years ago. So I'm just a little bit ahead of where most of society is. And that's, in a single year, I basically lost everything that I thought I was going to be. I got divorced, lost my house in a flood, had a traumatic brain injury, dropped out of grad school, stopped being a scientist. And that's when I left the country and went to Vietnam on a, $1,000 a month business. And sort of gave myself this runway to learn business, to explore the world, to become an adventurer. And in that space of the last 7 years, since that sort of big clearing, there's been more sort of micro adjustments to who I am on an identity level. But I would say all those things, sort of like everything crashed down. And there was a moment when I was sitting on a motorcycle at the beach in Bali, and I realized I had no identity at all. I was just this sort of human that had a name, but other than that, I was nobody. It could have been anywhere, any beach. And it was this really weird sensation. And it was, on one hand, there was like the grief, like, wow, I had this whole life, this whole persona that I had invested everything into being. And now I can just be whoever I want. And it was also very freeing. And I started rebuilding from there. I started constructing exactly what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And I started the podcast, and that's how I met you. And, so many things, the dominoes from there.
So actually, this is for my own curiosity, because I actually didn't know, like that the prior you, I guess we'll call it. So like So you were going to be like a scientist, and then what happened with the brain injury? Like what happened there?
Yeah, I always expected to be a professor, and my dad was a microbiologist. I was in grad school, PhD program for microbiology, and I had sort of taken on, his love of science, his appreciation of science, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. I'm really good at science. I got into this really hard to get into grad program, amazing, and it was just kind of this weird freak, literally a 1 in a million thing, a blood clot in my brain. It almost never happens to men. It happens slightly more often to women. But yeah, they were like, you'll probably die. Like, you have a small chance of survival, and I survived. They caught it at the right time, or my body didn't go into, it didn't end up being a stroke, or it didn't go to my heart and stop my heart. So all these things, it was like I could. There was a few weeks where it was like, you could die right now or right now, and then after a few weeks of not actually dying, I was like, all right, well, this is my second chance. This is my second life, because I made it through. And it was really a big sort of warning, eye-opening, just, really made me consider a lot of things.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure. That's what, so wait, just so I understand fully. So on that, so did you have like a headache or something, and you went in and they were like, this isn't a headache. This is,
yeah. So it was like this dull headache that got worse and worse and worse until I could no longer function. And you know how guys are, we're like, just going to try to push it through.
oh
And
yeah,
so
I'll be fine.
so I didn't go see anyone until it was so bad that I couldn't function. And there's no pain receptors in the brain. So it was pushing against the skull so hard. That's when I felt the pain. So that was, at that point, the blood clot itself went from the top of my head all the way down my neck. It was like 9 inches long. So just now
Wow.
it's just like one big piece of scar tissue that's just sort of permanently there.
Got it.
So I was at the hospital and got the MRI and the CAT scan. I was kind of joking around. I was like, I guess he'll call and tell me everything's going to be fine tomorrow.
Yeah, that's probably how I'd be too. Sorry,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, great to be here, guys.
Yeah. And then on my way home, they called me. I picked up my phone. They're like, you need to turn around and come here immediately. And we're gonna, like, as soon as I walked in, they stabbed me with a needle, and they were like, this is gonna prevent you from clotting any further. They were like, very, very serious.
Yeah.
Had to switch from joking around to taking it seriously very quick.
It is like not funny at all. I mean, because you're okay and you're here, that's why. But I just mean, that is like so dramatic. That's so crazy. So then, okay. So how does that is that just like a random, like you said, like 1 in a million? That's like you didn't do anything that caused that, just like randomly or like, how does that happen?
If I were to say what caused it, and of course we did some digging and I got the second opinions and everything, it's a combination of altitude, dehydration, overexertion. I had done a bike race. I had drank a lot of coffee that day. I was doing the race on a sort of a hot, dry day at 10,000 feet in Montana. And I have a genetic mutation that makes my blood 4% stickier. So if you dehydrate someone at altitude and they have this, well, there's a slight chance, but actually, 20 or 30% of the population has this mutation. So it's not that big of a deal. So it's still conjecture. We don't really know.
Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, no, that I did not know that about you. So, okay. So that's kind of like the first, I guess, awakening, but then the second one is the motorcycle in Bali. And then when you start like reconstructing, what, I guess you said it like, so it's like you kind of died in a sense there, your ego did, and then you start reconstructing, and it felt good, but did you also kind of feel like, holy shit, like I thought I was this, like I spent all this time as this other person? Was there any regret or any negative feelings, or it was just kind of like a rebirth?
Well, the way that I look at it is I was running on sort of a program or a script, and I had sort of been going down, we're all sort of running on our habits or our unconscious programming until they become conscious, until they're in our face and we can see them. And so I could see how my decision to become a scientist, I could see sort of where I picked up that idea. And I realized that it wasn't fully my idea. It was like, my professors telling me you should do science because you're good at it, or, just being around a lot of scientists growing up. And when you see that, there's this sort of invisible script that you're running on, all of a sudden you realize, oh, well, that's just a program. That's just like how I was sort of indoctrinated, intentionally or unintentionally, up to this point. And so, all of these beliefs about what we should be doing with our lives largely come from somebody else. Somebody's like planted the idea, like some of the things that I'm doing right now, like their idea I've stolen from you. So, but that's like a conscious thing. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe I should do that. But then there's unconscious things where you take ideas and you just run with them without necessarily knowing you're doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And okay, so then what with the 3D and the 4D, like dive a little bit deeper into that, like where, because it seems, I don't know, I feel like it's like almost like a tipping point. Like it can change the views of a bit like business people is what I'm feeling from what you're saying, like on how to build something.
So I'm not sure exactly like the easiest access point, but let's say the big picture, Earth is passing through a field of high energy particles right now, and Earth oscillates in the plane of the galaxy every 65 million years. So it's like 27 million years up, 27 million years down. But whenever it passes through this field, you see these huge explosions of evolution in the fossil record. So that's when fish came on land. That's when plants became trees. That's when monkeys became humans. You see these sparks of evolution. And so we're going into that sort of galactic weather pattern right now. And what's happening is essentially we're evolving. Like, what's the next level of evolvement of humanity? And a lot of people seem to believe we're sort of leaving behind sort of this three-dimensional polarity separation, like us versus them type of thinking, and we're moving into a new, where we're able to experience 5 dimensions, which includes like the collapsing of timelines or the shifting of timelines, where sort of anything could become possible, future realities become imminent, and also people become more focused on the benefit of the whole. And so we're seeing systems in our world that are very ego focused, very me focused. They're starting to collapse. Financial systems, political systems, things that are like, I'm going to take as much as I can. I'm going to exploit the environment. I'm going to try to have as much power as possible because I'm looking out for myself. Those things by nature, as we evolve as a species, will be replaced by how can we make the system fit for the greater good? So maybe that's a larger context of sort of what's happening. As think of humanity and the planet as like an entire unit of consciousness that's sort of upgrading itself because of the external weather conditions.
I see what you mean. So, all right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that. You tell me if you don't want to go down any of these paths, then you just stop me. But
and some of it I'm not as well versed in.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll also let you know when I get to the edge of my expertise.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what I think just because it's current, and hopefully I'll try to use different terms and stuff so that like YouTube doesn't take this down or anything. So I guess, look, I see kind of both sides in a sense. I always try to like look at both sides. What I mean by that is like, I watch Alex Jones InfoWars, and then I'll throw on, if you know who that is, and I'll throw on a little bit of CNN occasionally, just to see like, because they're literally the opposite. And And what I'm getting at here is I agree with everything you just said. And I do think regardless of how bumpy or turbulent this might be for a lot of people, I do think the end result is what you're saying. And it is going to be a good thing, hopefully. But like, for instance, one of the things is like, apparently, apparently like Bill Gates, like, and a lot of these like big world leaders, they believe, and it's actually called the Georgia Guidestones. So one of the things that they believe is that the earth should only have like 500 million people. That's like a healthy population for the earth. And we have like 8 billion. So where I start to, and I know this is like getting extreme, but where I start to just think, I'm like, okay, well, that might, let's just say that's true. Let's say it's true. That's good for the earth and everybody, but then you got to wipe out 7.5 billion people. So it's like, I don't agree with that. So it's like, and that's the most extreme point. So I guess what I'm saying is with current events, there's some fishy shit going on right now, I think.
Yeah. And what's, I'm reminded of, right, the villain in Avengers, right? Thanos, his objective, right? He's like, it's best if I just cut the population of the whole universe in half, because then planets will be able to be pure and good. Well, he's the villain, but they introduced him as like, well, that's actually not, a super negative place where he's coming from, right?
Yes.
So perhaps, let's say that's true, right? But they think that the best intention, right, is for a very low population planet. There's really no way to say anything like if it's better to have only 500 people or not. So I think what we're talking about is when we look around and we see conspiracy theories and we see weird shit and we're starting to question things. I think one major theme here is it's time for people to really start trusting themselves. So there's an amount of like, well, I get conflicting information and this source is fairly reputable and this source is fairly reputable. And sort of either one could be true or valid or to some degree, right? But so when, you have to make decisions about, I don't know, whether to get a vaccine or whether to move your family out of America or whether to make a vote or whatever based on something, right? And so there's like, how do you establish trust? Who do you trust? And how do you actively make a choice? Like, how do you discern for yourself what you're going to do? And I think some of those things are really just in our face right now. And I think Trump's role overall, big picture, like if we look from a galactic perspective, his role was to highlight the polarity and the two sides of the coin in almost all these places, right? His personality, his policies, all these things brought up a lot of polarity. And so that's serving its own function right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've actually heard a few other people just in like random YouTube videos or something say like, if Trump, whether you like him or not, one thing he definitely did do, like you just said, is just kind of shine a light on what is going on. So, whether there was, fraudulent, whatever, maybe not. But now we're aware that now that we're aware that we don't know, let's put it that way. So I think, and that's what I mean. It's like, it's been so turbulent, but I do think it's like at the end, it would be for the good. And that's what's interesting too, is I was listening to another interview about some of historical leaders that we would view as like really bad individuals, like Stalin and like people like that. And this was, his name's, you would probably love his podcast. His name's Lex Friedman.
I've seen him on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was interviewing this one guy and they were talking, about people like Stalin and stuff. And they were saying like, these people actually really, like Stalin apparently really believed in communism and like really truly believed it was best for all the people. Right. So it's like an interesting thing where it's it's like, okay, well, looking at it now, we can kind of see that that didn't really pan out too well. But like, was Stalin, did he have like evil intent? Like, and not to like, say, hey, Stalin, you didn't have bad intentions. Like, you're a good guy. That's not what I'm saying. But like, that's how you look at like, maybe Bill Gates is looking at this, like with the carbon and all, but still, I don't know. It's just so freaking wild, man.
And
And I
so,
feel like, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
like if we go to a Star Wars analogy, right? There's the dark and the light sides. Those are, two sides of the same force, and it's important to remember that let's call this Earth School, right? Like if we incarnate into a human body for Earth School, and we're either on the dark side or the light side, we're getting spiritual evolution either way. So it's equally valued for a soul to learn lessons on the dark side or the light side. So while like we all want to be white hats, like we want to be the good guys, we want to like get rid of oppression, and we want to get rid of control, and it's like all these things in our experience, in our 3D experience, on a much higher level, like the universe experiencing itself from good and bad is just the way it is. So we like, from where we're coming from as humans, we place this value judgment on like they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, but on a higher level, it's all the same.
Good point. And actually, so yeah, and Alan Watts talks, this is, I learned, he says, well, you can't have like lightness without darkness. You can't have one or the other. So what do you think? All right, let's get spiritual real quick. What do you think happens? Well, two things here I want to say. One, I think we're going to end up living to like, I think we can live to 200 personally. Like, I have a really good doctor down here in Miami, and I think it's definitely possible that we're going to live a long time. And then by the time we get to 200, if you decide that's what you want, like kind of conjoining with a like technology that somehow like keeps the body flowing somehow and the brain active, even though it's not like 100% human, it's like part tech. I do think there's going to be a chance maybe in our lifetime that we could live forever. I really do think that. Do you think that's possible?
Well, we're already, matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed, fundamental laws of the universe. So we already live forever. And
yes.
So what you're talking about is like enabling the body to continue on, which here's where I'll go with this. What we see as the physical body is really just atoms, right? And what are atoms but a sort of a field of particles that make them up? And essentially those fields are just sort of electromagnetic frequencies. And so when we look and we see each other, when I see you or I hear you, I like my sensors in my eyes are decoding you as a person, and my ears are decoding the vibration of your voice as words. But really those are all just fundamentally like frequency, vibration, fields. And so, we're making sense of this reality through our senses, but underneath that is just sort of the basic components of the universe. And so then if you think about what is disease, then it's fundamentally it's a different like a healthy body has one vibrating frequency or a whole group of frequencies, and a diseased body is just a slightly like maybe messier set of frequencies. It's incoherent to some degree. So a lot of times the physical manifestation of the disease doesn't originate in 3D. It originates on a much larger level with an incoherence of frequency. And so the future of medicine is addressing not the sort of interpretation, the 3D health, but what's causing the frequencies to be unaligned. And there's some interesting documentaries and research that shows like simply sometimes sound healing can heal somebody, right?
Yeah.
Or thought frequency can heal somebody, right? Jesus just put his hands on people and healed them. Um, I've just become Reiki attuned, and that's basically a tradition of healing that's passed down from Jesus, where you can just put your hands on people and you can heal yourself, or you can heal other people, and there's no physical action, but something underlying that is happening.
All right, few things there. This is awesome. So I interviewed a woman named Amanda Holmes earlier today. It's Chet Holmes' daughter. And if you know the Ultimate Sales Machine
Yeah.
book, so she had celiac disease, and then she found like this Indian, I'm blanking on her name now, Indian guru that basically taught her how to heal her own and it was like you were kind of saying, it was like an energy buildup that put holes in her intestine lining, and she did this consistent like energy, I guess dispersing, I guess you'd call it, practice for a while, and she literally healed her own celiac disease through it. And she can now like eat what she like. She doesn't have to avoid gluten or anything. I was like, what? That's like, but this is like, it was, when I say what, I mean, it was really cool, but
Yeah.
honestly, it doesn't surprise, like when people say things like that, or even what we're talking about, it doesn't sound that weird to me, just because at the end of the day, ultimately we're on this spinning ball in the universe. So it's like, oh yeah, could energy be the cause of your, like, you know, whatever's going on? Like, yeah, like why not? Like that seems actually very realistic, you know? So, but I thought that was really interesting. And then based on what you just said too, I was out to dinner last night with one of my friends down here. Her name's Shay. And she was talking to me about Theta Healing, which I think Theta is like a frequency. So I don't know if it's similar to Reiki, but maybe it is. But on the Reiki side, how does that, I'm just curious more about that. Like how,
So
this
is really cool because it works. It just sort of works effortlessly, and you basically just get it from somebody who has it. So it's been passed
okay.
down person to person for millennia, and it's the legend goes that it's part of our physiology, which enables this. So you essentially just put your hands on somebody, and it heals them. And the person receiving the healing usually feels a lot of heat from your hands, but your hands they're not hot, but they can feel the heat. And you can also do it to yourself. Like you can just put it wherever. And so I'm actually doing an experiment all month where I do Reiki to myself before, during, and after workouts to see, and I do it on the muscles that I'm working out to see if it helps me recover faster or get fitter more quickly. And what I've found is that it basically eliminates muscle soreness. So, you know, if you've been to the gym or done new exercises or anything, especially with plyometrics, like jumping exercises, usually I get quite a bit of soreness from doing that, like multi-days of soreness. And this, you know, maybe like a day or less of effect. So it's super cool to right. I'm a sample size of 1, but I can experience that it's working.
So basically, yeah, I do HIIT workouts sometimes, and I will have multiple days of I literally like limp around this place sometimes because you know you're doing like squats, high knees, like crazy stuff, and like it is tough. But just so I'm clear on the Reiki, so if I were to fly to where you are, you could essentially, and it's not this simple, or maybe it is, you could essentially just be like on my shoulder and just like give it to me.
I can also do it from here. I haven't tried it yet, but theoretically you can distance. Space and time, right, in the 5th dimension don't exist, so there's no problem to do that.
Okay, so we want to try it or not? Okay, send it my way, brother. I want it.
Yeah, we'll try it sometime.
Okay, we'll try another time. Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, let's build a foundation for this real quick, just so there's like an understanding of 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimension. Like, what are the differences between those three?
So you'll hear terms, or I've heard terms, right? So we're dealing with third, fourth, fifth dimensions up to, I believe, 13 dimensions.
Mhm.
But you'll also hear about densities of consciousness, and densities of consciousness are like on a piano scale. So we're in, um, most humans are 3.12 density or 4.1 density, and we're moving in between third and fourth density. So it's like how advanced consciousness goes until it's basically uh, goes back to being God or the universe or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then so the dimensions are a little less clear to me, but as I understand it, the fifth dimension is where space and time. So the fourth dimension is time, and then the fifth dimension is sort of space and time collapse into a single. Uh, so past, present, and future are all the same, and space, here and there is all the same.
Okay, got it. Yeah, to me, this is what's popping in my head as you're explaining. It's kind of like when you turn off a TV and the blackness like shoots into this like a little white like ding at the end, like a bang, and then the TV's off, and then
Yeah.
that's what the fifth seems to me like, something like that.
So you can be a person, and your consciousness can be hopping back and forth between a third dimensional experience and a fifth dimensional experience. Like you can be in your physical body, but your consciousness, right? When you daydream or dream or hypnotize yourself or any of these things, your consciousness is free away from your body, and it can be operating in the fifth dimension. And that's how telepathy is so easy in the fifth dimension and all of these things.
Mhm.
So you may experience, as we sort of, again, the foundation for this is like humans are upgrading. So you may find yourself having a 5D experience sometime where you like manifest something really fast, or you like can pick up on exactly what someone's thinking, and you're like, whoa. Or you get really lucky, exactly the right place to be at the right time. And then other times you're down in the third dimension and you're just like plodding along. You're like trying to do everything for your business in sequence, or you're trying to like get to the place where you can like do all these things so that you can be happy. And it's like, it's a very linear. 3D is like very,
Mhm.
do this, do this, do this kind of stepwise thing.
Got it. And I would say, like, would you agree? You kind of need both to like live like a solid. Because if you're only in the fifth, then I feel like you'd be almost like floating in a sense, like you would not like literally, but because to me, the fifth kind of feels like it's almost like you're like so present that like, well, that's the time part. So time is irrelevant. It just is going and you're not even like paying attention or aware of it. Um, and then really the space kind of is the same way in a sense. Cause if say you're meditating and you're truly present, then, and your eyes are closed, I don't know. It's just kind of like the space around you is irrelevant in a sense, as long as nobody's like coming to attack you or something. If it's like a nice breeze, it's kind of like irrelevant. And then it's
Well,
and then
here's where we're getting to the limits of my understanding.
yeah.
But you can also like I would expect that people will be in bodies for a long time. Like we won't be showing up necessarily as angels or something like that, or disembodied non-corporeal entities. But not all of our consciousness and our soul is here. Some of it is still in the non-physical realm. So when you dream, you're more the totality of your whole self, your whole consciousness, than when you're awake. Because now it's kind of split. You're kind of limited by your senses when you're awake. And so you forget this higher self, your connection to collective unconscious to a large degree, to non-local mind. So through meditation, through dream time, through hypnosis, you can get there. But if you're just living your day as a normal 3D human, you're not sort of bringing into account the sort of larger picture of who you are, the full extent of you.
So have you ever heard on Rogan's podcast? I forget, or I think he's talked about it multiple times, but there's a theory that like there is another like universe where it's like literally the same thing has already happened. Like there's like multiple of them. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe it. I think that's what it is. Like there's another you and me having the same exact conversation, like far, far away.
Yes. Yeah. So let's say there's like an unlimited, infinite number of universes. Some of them will be really similar. Like the only difference is the shirt we wore today or whatever. And you're essentially like, as you create a future reality, right? There's a probable future reality, but there's like a series of most probable futures for you and us, right? As a nation, as a planet, like here are the most probable futures. And this is why people like Nostradamus back in the day could predict, or, you know, psychics can sort of try to predict the future because they're looking at what's probable. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if something happens, and this is where the Mandela effect comes from, like we hop into a different universe or a different timeline in this universe, like something changes based on a decision, or you know, let's say all of America is starting to feel a certain way, and that sends the direction of our country one way or another.
Gotcha. I see. Now, do you think, have you heard what Elon's talked about? And then also after this, because I know you have some topics, so just stop me if I'll, because I want to. This is good.
We're just weaving.
Yeah. But so Elon talks about how he like, and multiple people have said this, that they think it's like more likely than not that this is like an illusion. Like this is like I don't know, like we're in a video game or something. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a useful way of thinking about how what I was saying about your physical you is just a small fraction of the full expression of you. It's mm-hmm. It's like the pinky tip of your total experience.
I see what you mean.
And in the Matrix, like in the movie, if this is a matrix, there are rules. Let's say physics, right? We're bound by these Newtonian physics, like gravity pulls this way and all of these things. And to that, we really are in a sort of a reality that allows us to have constraints. So the polarity of like light and dark, or you and me, the constraints of the laws of physics that allow us to experience ourselves. So if you know, one way of looking at the universe is like, here's one consciousness, this is God, this is the beginning. And it just became an infinite number of fractals, pieces of consciousness. And then so each one is exploring its own path, right? I'm exploring my own life and experience, and you are too, but eventually, but we're essentially all part of the universe experiencing itself. And so these dimensions, these densities are ways that it can experience itself.
Gotcha. Just not to always go back to Alan Watts, but it's just, I like that guy. One of the things he says, he's like, the ocean waves like the universe peoples. That's what he says. And I thought that's a pretty good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, he's like, and what else does he say? He's kind of like, people are like the little like curly cues on the end of the actual thing. Like it's
yeah, exactly.
So I guess with that, where do you have any predictions? So we're up leveling, right? And I agree with you there. So where do you think any time frames, or like, how do you think this is going to pan out in the near future?
Well, let's look at it from if we tie this back to business, for a concrete example, entrepreneurs create systems so that they can have specific outputs for their business, like a system that brings in customers, a system that makes sure the books are polished when they go out. So if you look at other systems, the systems in our society, what we're seeing is the result of those systems. So the political candidates you get to choose from are the results of the political system sort of putting them forth. The pollution is the result of the, sort of economic system. Uh, people, minorities being incarcerated too much is the result of a prison system. So if you look at all the things in our world, like the outputs that we see are simply the results of the systems that are set up. So there's no judgment, good or bad. It's simply like you get an output, you can see what the system will do. And so if we don't like the outputs, if we don't like seeing homeless people, suffering, if we don't like oppression, if we don't like power being corrupting people because it's too concentrated, then we have to have a different system if we want different outputs. So essentially, we have to remove an existing system and rebuild a new system. So I think that's what's going to happen as people say, like, I want something better. I want a beautiful humanity. I want an equal humanity. I want opportunity, all these things. And we're just gonna reinvent these systems. And one great example is blockchain, cryptocurrencies, right? There's nobody who's controlling the direction of digital currency. There's no central person who's like, I'm going to grab all the power and make you all do this, even if it's coming from a good place, because it's decentralized. Another example is a guy I interviewed last week, the movement of authentic relating. There is no leader. There's hundreds of leaders around the world that are bringing people together in groups to learn how to be in relationship with other people, to be humans with other humans, and learn the skills of doing that. But there's no central governing body. There's no authority that says we have to be better at relating to each other. It's just, that's what people want. And so that's, I think, what's going to happen. That's my prediction, is that you'll see systems that are no longer fit falling away, and you'll see new systems that really bring a beautiful experience of being human into existence. And that's largely why I'm coaching entrepreneurs. I'm coaching thought leaders who are, leading the way and bringing these systems in to humanity.
Dude, that's huge. I love that, because I think I agree. I mean, I hope that's like what happens. I think the kind of battle against that is the current people in power, right? Not, I just, it seems to me, I don't know, but it just seems like, for instance, whatever's the president of China, whatever his name is, it doesn't seem like he would really appreciate that world. Like, it seems like he would very much try to fight against that to keep power. But I don't know.
He might, if he continues to work from the same place, but he may have the same thing I experienced. He may have his own ego death. He may completely reinvent himself and his identity. And there's a lot of corporations and profits are very sort of they're very sort of like, what's in it for me centered, versus how can I be of service centered. I think a lot of people right there, even the employees of an organization, may be operating from I want to be helpful to people, but the concept of and I don't have a specific example, but like an oil company is a great example. They're centered on like taking as much value for themselves, and they're sort of ignoring negative externalities or how it might impact other people. And there's a shift on a level which is like service to self versus service to others. That's a fundamental shift that's happening.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's like a level of, it's like levels of consciousness in a way. It's so, because then, so service to others, but then the next level is like, service to others, but also at the same time to like, as a whole to the planet. Right. And then I guess from the planet, the next would be like the whole universe, but we'll wait for Elon to get us to Mars before we get there. But right. Cause I think that's it's almost like the natural, it's interesting, right? All right. So let's look at these two paths. So I think that's kind of a natural path for entrepreneurs to go, right? So let's just say when you start a business at first, I mean, ideally you could start just out of acts of service, right? But let's just say, most entrepreneurs, when they're broke, when they're starting, they're bootstrapping, so it's like at the end of the day, you can, keep helping people and be in service, but like you got to pay the bills. So you kind of do start off in a sense, like it being about you, because at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know, you need a computer to actually even operate and so I think sometimes, and I'm even trying to think about myself, right? So I'm trying to put myself in a situation where I wrote a book, it did well, and then people started reaching out to me. I helped a few people for free, got testimonials, and then grew a business from there. So it's like, but as I've gotten, I guess, more.
You're a fantastic example of someone who operates from service to others. And it's business seems from where I'm standing, seems to have come easily because largely, and out of 100 people, you're in the top 5% of generosity and adding value. Just if you didn't know that about yourself.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with people, a lot of times where they get stuck is because things are not money's not flowing in easily. Then they start to panic, then they start to have doubts, then they start to worry, and then they start to go back into like, what's in it for me? Like, how can I grab as much money out of this interaction? Like, there's a neediness. And so it's not actually, they're sort of forced into that position because they're dealing with these doubts, these mental patterns. And so you just need to have the skills to sort of very cleanly navigate how to put something in someone's best interest and deliver something that's like going to make their lives so much better. And if you can cleanly market it, sell it, and deliver it so that it is still of service to them, then money just flows in, it just piles in, right? Mm-hmm. And so you need to learn the proper vehicle, and you need to be skilled in sales, right? You don't want to be manipulative, but you want to understand how people make decisions. You want to be able to, if they have a belief that's not serving them, then you have to help them dismantle a belief so that they can hire you, so that they can move forward with their lives. So, ultimately, I think people end up being in a service to self place because they're full of fear and doubt and also a lack of skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. And I guess it's interesting. I was on an interview, and that's the guy I was interviewing, he actually called me out because I was like, because what you just said there resonated, because it's like, I don't want to say that I don't think business is easy as far as like doing it, right? Like you have to put in the work, but the actual understanding of just like how to actually like create like wealth is a very easy concept to me. Meaning like, whatever it is, in my case, it was books, but it's just like, you just like help people and then they pay you money for the help. And then there's like how I've built the business is on collaborating with other people, right? So I'll like build a relationship with a publisher, and the publisher will refer me the authors for the marketing. So then it's not even like sales anymore. That's what I realized with partnerships. Like if you build enough partnerships, you don't even, and there's nothing wrong with sales, to be clear. It's just, I don't actually love doing like quote unquote sales calls. I like building partnerships, and then the person refers to me and the trust is already built. And then I don't have to do really any sort of, I'm just like, yes, nice to meet you. I know that you already know the price and everything, and I'll send you that. Like that's just easier. So maybe that's me avoiding like he said, it's because I avoid conflict. I don't know, but regardless.
Well,
Yeah.
so there's another skill here, which is fundamentally like you're good at giving, but you have to be good at receiving as well. And so, one of the fundamental laws of the universe is, right, you get out what you put in. There's this sort of universal reciprocity. And so if you're not getting opportunities, if you're not building wealth, if your business isn't flowing, one of the things to look at is, are you giving enough, or are you blocking receiving at all? So if you're operating from and I think the research, give and take, right? Adam Grant said, like, most people are matchers in life. There's like 10% are natural givers, 10% are takers, and most people are in the middle, where they sort of like tit for tat, I'll help you, you help me kind of thing. And he basically proved that givers, if you give without the intent of any expected outcome, they have much more successful careers. So you can just train yourself to have a habit of being a giver. And he talks about the 5-minute favor, and making introductions, or giving someone ideas, or reviewing their book, or these little things that can make a big difference in relationship. And training yourself to be a giver, but also training yourself to be a receiver, to ask for, if you're working on a project, ask for support, ask for guidance, ask for help. If you're if you're looking for the opportunities to come to you, you will spot them. If you're not, you won't. And so you'll become lucky versus somebody else is not lucky. And that's, so you have to learn both to be a giver and a receiver.
I agree. And I think it's like, and to me, that's like pretty, it's almost like, I actually have a little book that I wrote called Giving is Receiving. I don't even know if I agree with that, but I'm just saying, this was like 6 years ago, but like, I just think it's like a law almost. Like, if you just keep giving, I think where people kind of mess up with giving is they want the receiving immediate. And like, I have just naturally, I think it's just like, I know that, I just think I know, like, it's gonna, whether it's 100 years from now, maybe I'll already be dead by the time it comes back around, who knows? But like, that's just kind of the way, even you saying what you said, like, actually felt good when you said I'm in the top 5%. I actually really I was not actually truly aware of that. And so, and I mean, that's just, it's your opinion. Maybe, I don't know if everybody thinks that, but like, it actually, maybe like that was like maybe out of me helping you with like a collaborative book. And now like 3 years later, we're on a podcast, you said something and that made me feel good. So maybe that was what it was. That was
and maybe so. And people try to specify how they're going to get paid back. And they're like, okay, I'm going to do this thing for you. And like, all right, universe, you pay it back to me in this way. Well, you're really trying to limit the unlimited universe. I mean, come on, like, why not just let the universe give you what you're asking for? And people, here's another thing that I harp on a lot, which is like people's obsession with money as it applies to abundance. And you're right on track again, Tyler, because relationships, give you access to sort of the full spectrum of abundance. So we talked about luck, like opportunities coming your way, the right thing at the right time, or somebody giving you an idea that helps you solve a problem where you thought you were going to have to pay, but you can just figure out or somebody just gives you a thing, right? They give you a house or a free coaching or whatever it is. You didn't have to pay for it. You just got it. So there's a whole aspect of gifts. There's bartering, right? You can swap services. You're a chiropractor and they're a massage therapist, right? And you can swap with each other. So there's trading. No money has to be exchanged, but you still get what you want. So there's so many more things, so many more aspects of abundance that all come from your relationships. And so, 100%. Money, if you focus on money, you're actually limiting yourself. If you focus on how the universe is going to grant you what you want, you're limiting yourself.
Yeah, I love this, man. Dude, I'm not even kidding you. This is amazing because I remember when I was really young, I used to say, I'd be like, if you have like the right, not just the right, but if you build enough relationships, and I was pretty young. I used to think this. I was like, if I have a friend in every state, every city, like all over the world, I won't even need money because I'll just hit them up and be like, well, I guess I need a little money. I need to get there. But like once I'm there, I can just crash on the couch, and not that you would want to like take advantage of all that. That's not what I mean. But it's just funny that like relationships to me are, and the thing too, if from a business standpoint, just the way that I've built it, like it's a never ending flow, right? So like, and there's nothing wrong with advertising, nothing wrong with any of that. It all works. People have built huge companies doing it, but it's just like, if you build relationships the right way, it just never ends. Like clients come in and it was a relationship I built 5 years ago, like, and I'm like, why am I thinking about any of this other stuff? Like, I enjoy the relationships. I enjoy the podcast or the relationships are fruitful and like, why am I thinking about any sort of other things? Like, this is, I don't understand. But yeah, I just think you're right. And most people, they think from a clock in, clock out, like, I gave you 9 hours of my time. I deserve this amount. Whereas naturally it's just, I think if you can change and maybe you can train yourself, maybe it was more natural for people like you and I, but I just think it's more about the actual relationship. I'm never like thinking like, what am I going to get out of this in this immediate moment? It's more just like, yo, maybe we can collaborate. Maybe in 10 years from now, we'll do something together, but there's no rush, no pressure. And like, who the heck knows? Like, maybe we'll be on Mars in 10 years. I don't freaking know. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, so, I mean, for people listening, I'm a recovered taker, and I had to train myself out of being a taker into being a matcher. And sometimes I'm a giver, and sometimes I fall back into being a matcher. And so if you're listening and if you're like, oh, I wonder where I am, Tyler may have just learned this at an early age, right? Maybe he was born with it, or maybe he just like figured it out earlier. But anybody at any time can become a giver, and do experiments, do a bunch of giving, and then see if you have amazing things happen in your life. Prove it to yourself that that it works, right? Because otherwise you'll probably just continue on whatever trajectory you're on.
Yeah, no, definitely try it. I think it works.
I've actually got I have another good story about, I did a whole month in New Zealand for free.
Okay.
Largely because I was like, I wonder how far I can push, like having a network of people. I knew like a dozen people in New Zealand, and I ended up, staying at one friend's place for a week. And then I ended up getting a free train trip on the way from the north to the south. I did just like Instagram posting for the train company, and then they give you a car. The car rental companies, because everyone flies into the north and drives south. So all the cars keep flowing from north to south. And so they need people to take them back up. So you can get a car for free if you drive it back up. So I had another car for free for 4 days. I stayed in this guy who bred racing horses. So I got to hang around with like, $25 million horses. And
That's awesome.
then I was a guest of the university there. And then my friends' parents hosted me for a few nights, and then Derek Sivers, met up with him because he was, he's hiding out in Wellington, I believe. So I met up with him, and so it was this whole time, I was paying for my food, but a lot of times people were feeding me, and it was this sort of putting it up to the universe. Help me out. I'm going to ask for what I need and see how I can be supported. And it was very sort of built my faith in humanity to a large degree, just how amazingly supportive people were. And that was a very low moment for me. That was sort of like right after all that stuff had gone away, after my divorce basically happened. I was essentially all on my own. So I was very sort of emotionally vulnerable, and people were just so amazingly kind. And it was a really fantastic trip.
Yeah, I believe it, man. I really do think. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't, because of the time that I've put into. Like, I'm sure that I think I could last a long time just with relationships. But like, I know not everybody has been like that, but I think even people that aren't like, I guess, people focused in that sense, like, you can go further than you think with it. Just a random side question, because I'm just curious. When you were in New Zealand, did you go to, did you see like where the Lord of the Rings was filmed? Have you ever heard of that place? I want to see that
Yeah,
place.
there's locations. There's Hobbiton. We went to Hobbiton,
It's like the
which is
cliffs and stuff.
that's like where the hobbits live with the little circle doors and the little.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, yeah.
but there's filming locations all over. There's my favorite place was the Battle of Pelennor Field, which is like in the finale of the third movie, where sort of they're all sort of attacking the white castle on the cliffs. And it's just this big field battleground with mountains in the background. I ended up going trail running there, and it's kind of remote. There's not many people around, and it's beautiful. Ended up taking all my clothes off and running like 10 miles in the mountains naked, and I was just like hollering and yelling. I was like, freedom.
That's life, man. That's awesome. What's
great.
better than that? See, you don't need any money. Well, you got to get there, but you don't really need money to do that. Well, actually, you need money to get yourself out of jail if you get caught doing that. Other than that, you're good though.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to make sure, what do you got? We're a little over an hour now, but is there, what are some of the stuff on your list? Did we touch on?
What other notes do I have?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I mean, as you know, I'm always down for.
Well, here's another, here's another interesting project I'm working on.
Okay.
One of the guys I interviewed for my show, actually a team, they do past life readings for people. So there's a book that was really popular when I was growing up called Many Lives, Many Masters. And this therapist sort of hypnotized his client, and she ended up being regressed into many, many past lives, and all of her physical symptoms like skin rashes and anxiety and PTSD was not from her current lifetime, but it was all from her past lifetimes where she had been like burned at the stake and imprisoned and like beaten to death, and all of these things that she was really afraid of in those past lifetimes cleared up her physical symptoms in this lifetime. So that was a really big deal in the 90s when I was growing up. And I happened to come across this opportunity of this team. One of them basically sends their consciousness back to find a past lifetime, and the other one's just sort of asking questions. They're sort of the guide that keeps them tethered to this place in time. And they go back and they find one lifetime that there are lessons that you can use right now in this lifetime. And so they went back and they discovered that I was this French trapper living in sort of the Northwest Territory, and that I was a great storyteller, and that I was sort of like a loner in the sense that I was going out into the wilderness and trapping. But when I would come back, people would gather around and I would tell them sort of parables and life lessons and spiritual teachings through stories about the wilderness. So they said, what you should do in this lifetime is you should tell more parables. You should focus on your storytelling, and you can teach people really well through that. And obviously I'm a podcaster, I'm an author. I tell stories to my kids. So some of the pieces are already there. But this experiment, I came up with this idea. It actually just popped into my head one day. I was like, could I access my French language skills from a past life and sort of download them into this lifetime quickly? So I'm trying to figure out how I can learn French effortlessly by like tapping into my previous ability to speak French. So I've started familiarizing myself with the French language through Duolingo, just using the language app. But I'm going to try to figure out if I can do it either with hypnosis or through Dreamtime or some other method where I can like pull in the memory of that language. Because what I would really love to do is basically prove that I learned French sort of instantaneously by accessing a past life.
Dude, that's sick. That's like a download. That's like a Matrix download when it gets.
Yeah.
I see. Again, that doesn't even sound that far fetched to me. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts overall on like past lives? Like, because I guess it's like it's like reincarnation in a sense. What they're kind of saying is because energy never dies, like you said earlier too. So it's not that like you, Derek, like lived a bunch of lives, right? But it's like more like your soul and your energy has been in different bodies.
Yeah,
That
so there's some really fascinating research here that I can get into if you
okay,
want.
I'd
So
love
it's
to
like,
hear it. Yeah, because that doesn't seem far fetched either to me.
yeah.
Like honestly, I don't know.
So the cycle of reincarnation. So what happens after we die? What happens before we're born? So here's just a couple of really cool things. Um, Kids that remember their previous life, that can be validated, right? If you're like, oh, I was such and such in this family in Texas, and my name was Jim Smith, and my relatives were such and such names. Like, you can go and ask those people, what oh yeah, and sometimes they even take the kids to the family, and they know everything about the whole family, right? So they're bringing in some memories, some experience of their past life, and usually this happens between ages of 4 and 7. So there's some sort of permeability there where you can sort of remember, if you had previous human incarnations, who you were. The
Mm.
sort of the most recent one. A lot of times people will have a birthmark. If they were killed in a certain way, if they died, the birthmark will be at the place of the injury. So
Mm.
my daughter has a birthmark on her leg, and so learning that, I was like, whoa, that's really wild. Um, Another really cool thing is that um, facial recognition software. If a kid says, I used to be this person in a previous life, the facial recognition software will match the previous incarnation and the current incarnation. So
That's
there's
wild.
some amount of physical morphology that continues on through lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this really interesting evidence that we've started to see here. And then, um, from people that have near-death experiences, right? They leave their body, and their consciousness can sort of move around in the hospital room, or sort of like above the scene of a traffic accident. And then when they're resuscitated, whoop, the consciousness goes right back down into the body. So that's kind of like what the evidence says is happening at death. There's like this thin little cord that attaches your consciousness into the body. So the way I've heard it talked about is that we humans are mind, body, spirit complex. So there's a soul, there's consciousness, and there's the body, which are all together in this moment. But as the body dies, the mind and the spirit can sort of revert back to their non-physical state.
Got it. That is wild. So like, and again, just it's the theme now. But so, what do you think that feeling's like? Because Alan Watts, I'll just say again, he says, yeah, whatever, guys. You
Shout
know
out to
it's
Alan Watts.
yeah, you guys know it's coming now. So, but he's like, when people ask, like, what is it like to die? He's like, well, what was it like before you were born? He's like, it's the same thing. That's kind of how he is. So, and so if I were to answer the question of, what was it like before I was born? I mean, I don't know. I don't remember that. But I feel like when you die, maybe it is the same, like kind of ending in a sense, or ending and beginning. It's kind of like one and the same, going back to no light without darkness. Like, you can't really have one without the other. But I do feel at death, and maybe some of the research shows this, like you said, where you like come out and you come back to life, at least there's like a feeling there. Cause I don't know if before you are born, if there's really like a feeling, So, but with death, there's at least an instant of like, it's coming out.
Yeah. So what we've also learned from kids and studies of kids talking about their experience of before they were born, and we actually had this with our son. He was talking to my wife, basically saying like, I'm coming. Here's what I'm going to look like. He looks like exactly how my wife sort of pictured him in her dreams. And basically he was like, hey, I'm going to bring you two together so that I can come in. And so he was essentially trying to like orchestrate our family from sort of before he was born. And the process it sounds like there's lots of people, not people, souls, entities, other dimensional beings that are advising people about their incarnations. So it's a very like considered and thought out, like what you want to experience in this lifetime, and what's going to serve your own, like what's going to give you the lessons that you need, right? So someone might choose, right, to be incarnated as a bad guy because they want to experience something important there for them. And a lot of times we may be an abuser and an abused in back-to-back lifetimes. So you can experience both sides of a thing, or you might be rich and poor, or you may be healthy or disabled. And in order to have like this full range of experience. So you're working with, you're choosing for yourself, but you're working with higher guidance to decide sort of what your life trajectory should be. And then, right, you have to have a family, you have to have a country to be born in, and all of these things. So you find the time and the place to incarnate. And again, it can't interfere with someone's free will, right? So if you want to be born into a family, but the parents decide not to have kids, well, you're SOL. You can't sort of force it to happen because has to be free will of the people who are incarnated. But you can sort of form agreements before you come in about the things that should happen, but they don't always have to because you have free will.
I got it. Yes. That's kind of cool to think about. There's like a council of souls and they're like, hey, you should go for this one. And then they're like, nah, they don't want to have kids. We'll go to the next one. So what are like, I guess, what are your on death, even though you don't really, cause the energy, like how do you feel about death? Like, are you like chill about it? Would you prefer to live as long as possible, or like what's your take? Like, and I mean in the human body.
Yeah, and I don't know, like if somebody was actively killing me, I'm not sure what it would be like, but
yeah,
because I've gone through that near-death experience with the brain, that was sort of my first looking at death very closely and what it meant to me. But the second was in a multi-day ayahuasca journey.
Here we go. Let's do it.
I faced down my own skeleton. I was like, there was a skeleton and it was me and it was hanging in a tree. And I had this like dialogue with it and basically conquered, my takeaway was like, okay, I've conquered death. So basically at this point, I feel totally at peace. Like anybody I know could die or I could die and that's totally fine. Right. Because I might still be sad because of my humanness. Like I might still feel grief and loss and miss them, but I will also know that they're not gone. They've just transitioned to a different state, right? So that's why mediumship works. That's why you can have someone and do a seance or a medium and talk to your dead grandma, because if she hasn't incarnated, her consciousness is still there, and you can just have a chat with her.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there more? I don't know if you've done research on this, but is there like kind of more likely ways or practices to be able to tap into that? Like, yeah.
Some people find it easier. So mediums and channels and psychics often just like have like genetic gifts, I think, that make it easier for them. But theoretically, we should all be able to learn how to do this, how to be psychic or telepathic or talk to. Well, here, I've got another story that I'll tell you in a second as we wrap this, but telepathic communication is one example that it would be amazing, right, to have, and I'm working on it. So I'll tell you about that next.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, yeah, and I think it would make it less sad, right? Less like, because if you knew, you're like, all right, shit, like my, like this is sad. My physical friend is no longer here. But if you knew that for the next 10, 20 years, as their soul is floating around, that you could still communicate with them, it would make it a little less hard to bear, I suppose.
Right? Yeah. So I was telling a friend of mine, her dad died last year, and I was like, why don't you talk to him? and why don't you just ask for him to come to you in your dreams? And he started coming to her in her dreams like every night, but it wasn't, she couldn't figure out what he was trying to tell her. She was like, that's so annoying. Like my dad keeps showing up and I love it, but uh, he's trying to tell me something. I can't get it. So she hired a medium to help. And then her dad was like, this is the wrong career for you. Like you need to switch and, take it from me. You couldn't hear me while I was alive, but you need to hear me now. And she was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to switch careers. And now she's way happier. And, her dad was giving her advice from the great beyond. So that was super cool.
That is amazing. That's great. And then, so how did in that story, the medium, because it was coming to her in a dream. So how did the medium like be with her while she was sleeping in a sense and like could kind of like connect it or?
No, her dad was coming in dreams at first, and then she needed clearer communication. So she hired this person and they did it over the phone, I think.
Oh,
And
okay.
and so the medium was like, who do you want me to talk to? And, like talk to my dad, like,
yeah.
And then so she, she verified, she was like, okay, this is your dad's name. Like this is, your dad's relationship. And it's like, yes, it's verified that this is the right, connection here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. That's
yep.
awesome. That is great. So wait, was there something you said you're working on something with that?
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure we wrapped. If you had any more, excuse me, in this sort of like death and life, if there's any more questions here.
Well, I think just for the listeners, I just say, I think a lot of people are afraid of death. And I think I would say, not to say one's further along than the other, but I feel like if I were to compare you and I think based on what you just said, you're a little bit more at peace with it. I am at peace with it, just as to say that I have come to the conclusion that I love to live and I enjoy everything about it. But I also feel like at 29 years old, I'm already I'm like, this is what I like to do. So it's just like, I like to interview because I don't know where this is going and it's fun. And this is like the biggest kind of adventure besides literally traveling somewhere that you can do. So I guess what I'm saying is how I allow myself to be okay with death is that I just feel like I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And then when it ends, I will have enjoyed from now until then anyway. So I guess I'm saying that for people that are afraid of it is like, I don't know, if you live your life the right way, I feel like it's okay. Like you become okay with it at the end. But I'm still at a point where I'd prefer not to die if I had to choose. So I don't know, whatever that means.
Yeah. And another related message for people listening is that you incarnated for right now. Like this is the moment in humanity. This is the moment in your life where things are happening, where you're going to get the sort of like the most meaningful part of your life, perhaps, but to participate in what's going on right now. So this is it. Like you're incarnated because of right now, which gives me the willies to think about like how special of a time this is. Like what we're seeing and learning and changing and creating, right? We get to decide the future of humanity going forwards. It's such a fantastic time to be alive. So, whether you live a really long life or, you have an agreement that you're going to have a shorter life, take advantage of this very moment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, tell me about the next thing. I want to hear about this.
Okay. So let's talk about aliens.
All right, let's do it.
Let's talk about aliens.
I'm in. All right. I think they're real. Elon Musk says that there's no evidence though.
But that's what an alien would say, right?
Oh, that was unplugged. Go ahead. That's That's great. That's true.
So
So true.
yeah, I love, as a kid, I love thinking about aliens. As I've done research, it's even cooler. And so there's this guy, Stephen Greer, who's he's just an ER doc who got really into figuring out, why it's been suppressed, like, why it's been so not cool to talk about aliens for a long time. And it's because there are aliens. And so he invented this protocol to bring aliens to you. So there's close encounters of the third kind, there's close encounters of the first kind, and so now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He invented close encounters of the fifth kind, which is where you generate the encounter by asking with your thoughts, essentially. So you have to get yourself into a state that's sort of receptive to communicating, and you have to do this sort of meditation where you help guide. It's kind of like a GPS coordinates, but it's like a universal coordinates, like here I am on Earth in this body. So and calling people in. So he's validated this protocol over a decade of, they capture it on different spectrum, night vision, normal light cameras, infrared cameras, and they can, they intend for ships to come and the ships come, or balls of light come, or all these different things. So it's a well-validated method that has been used by thousands of people. But last summer, he did an event that happened to be, there was some astrological thing happening, and I'm not well-versed in astrology, but it was called the universal conjunction or something. But anyway, he got 100,000 people around the world to all meditate at the same time, and he taught people so you could play a frequency on your phone that was kind of like a broadcast signal to help them find you, and then you would say, all right, I'm ready for contact, and 70% of these people, so it was 160,000 and 70%, so 100,000 people saw a UFO by asking for it all at the same time. It was last summer, and I did the whole meditation, because everybody's meditating at the same time. It was really cool to be a part of. I didn't see a UFO, but I did get telepathy. They said, thank you for contacting us. We got your message, and we essentially we appreciate you reaching out to us, and we're here for you whenever you need us. Mm-hmm. And it was like, holy shit. I asked for that, and they didn't come in a ship. They just came directly telepathically into my awareness. But so I've brought this up a couple times in this conversation, but you have to ask. A lot of times you might just be a single ask away from whatever it is you want. In this case, I wanted to meet some aliens, and all I had to do was ask, and they just showed up right away.
Dude, yes. Great lesson with that. But I'm just curious more, like, so did you, like, how did you hear it? Like, it was like, it came, like, it wasn't like a noise out here, like, but like you asked, and then like right away you like heard it in your mind, or like, how did that?
It happened later. So it was late at night, and I did this meditation. It was like an hour-long meditation. And then I went to bed, and they talked to me in dream time.
Dude. Yeah. Okay. I thought I was good at asking. I got to ask for more. That's awesome. Are they going to do that again? Or was that just like well, I'm sure they will at some point.
Yes. And so he does these things where he'll take you to like places where UFOs are a lot, like out in the desert, Sedona and Great Sand Dunes. There's a lot of UFO activity there. So you could go with him, but you can just learn his protocol. That's probably up on YouTube. Close encounters of the fifth kind. And then just, it's just like sending your thoughts out. Like in Star Wars, they're like, reach out with your thoughts. That's what it is. You're reaching out with your thoughts. And it doesn't come as like speaking. It comes as like the whole communication is just there.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a long communication, it's just all there all at once, and you just have to sort of decipher what it is.
Got it. Okay. Dude, we got to hang out more. I'm getting interested. This is awesome. Like shit, we weren't close enough then. I would have definitely picked up that phone call. That's awesome. Okay. Um, is Go ahead. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, so part of the reason why we don't see aliens walking around is because we're not necessarily ready. And so a lot of people thought like, oh, it's the government that's not disclosing the existence. They're keeping Roswell a secret, and they're keeping it a secret because they're evil. Well, another perspective or interpretation is maybe the aliens are only interacting with people that aren't going to lose their shit. Right? So when you're ready and you ask, you still might lose your shit. Because actually the first time I tried reaching out, a voice came into my head in dream time, and it freaked me out. It scared me so much. It woke me up in a cold sweat, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I want this. And so, well, you might be like, oh, I would love for aliens to land on my lawn and we can hang out. Like, you might really be scared. And there's not really a good way to know. And so, we may just have to ease into it. And I think that's what's happening, right? With the Navy sort of saying like, oh, we've had a UFO program for a long time, or that Israeli space program guy saying like, I work with the Galactic Federation Council, and here's what it was like with the Israeli Space Force and all this stuff. So they're kind of like dripping it out, but I don't think there's going to be a bunch of ships on the White House lawn right away.
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know if that's what you were talking about, but I heard something that with one of the bills that they're trying to pass, they like oddly, I can't even remember what bill it was. It was something with the C word. Um, and in this bill though, they like said that in like 6 months they were gonna like open up about UFOs and alien sighting, because apparently the government does have documentation or something that they have not shared publicly or something like that. I heard. I don't know. It could have been.
Yeah, and even if the government says like, here's some stuff, right? It's not going to be the whole picture of like, here's all the life in the universe. It might be a little bit of like, yeah, maybe there was a body in the Roswell crash. Okay, well, what else, And so I think, yeah, it'll come out slowly as collectively we're ready, but people can ask, and you might be able to interact sooner.
Yeah, and I love that honestly though, because it's just from even, and I guess I don't know what you'd call that, fifth dimension maybe, but like from third to asking in general, I feel like most people, that's the biggest thing. You know what I mean? Like going just even from business, just like asking, like for a podcast, like people, like that's how with the podcast, like I'll just like ask people. Even I've hit up like Tony Robbins. I'll like just message him on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, you want to come on the podcast? And like he hasn't responded yet, but it's fine.
Tony, come on.
Come on, dude.
Can't be that busy.
Yeah, I know. What are you doing? But like it's just things like that. And if you ask enough and learn how to ask, I suppose, then your chances just become more and more, right? So there's a specific way this guy, like you're saying, teaches on how to actually communicate with them. So I mean, I will definitely try it. I'm open.
Yeah. But I'll see if I can find a link to send you for the protocol.
Yeah.
What this is reminding me of is when you ask people, what do you want? A lot of times they'll tell you what they don't want. Or when you ask people, how would you wish the world to be? They'll say, well, I don't want crime, and I don't want hunger, and all these things. And so we're really good at focusing on the don't wants, but we haven't gotten clear on what we would actually ask for. And so that's another shift that I think is going to happen, or that needs to happen, is it's moving from responding to creating. It's moving from like just coping to imagination. to possibility. So what's really important right now is imagination. And so, building any type of creativity and imagination into your day is going to help move humanity forwards.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think psychologically, I think it's been proven that people do, like, they kind of harp on the negative more than the positive. So like something really good could happen and like you'll celebrate real quick and then you're on to the next thing. But if
Yep.
it's something negative, you'll dwell for like a long time. It's like way more profound for some reason. And I wonder though too, if it kind of has to do a little bit like with school, like with the way, because if you think about it, and it's just funny timing, like 2 days ago, I think it was like 2 days ago, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I just had like, I couldn't get back to sleep. And I just started typing in my notes on my phone, my dream life and where I am at currently. And then just a couple little steps of how I can get to the dream life. And it was really, I didn't plan on it at all. It's 3 a.m. I think it was like Sunday morning. Like it made no timing. So maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. I lose track of days, but and it was just so interesting to me of how, if you did that when you're younger, you would if it was like a quarterly kind of check-in with yourself, even as a kid, because I feel like as a kid, you kind of know naturally, even potentially more about yourself, like similar to you, I forgot to say that my dad's an accountant and I went to college for accounting. And I realized very quickly, I hate accounting. In fact, any sort of job in that realm, I would hate. In fact, I would argue to say that podcasting is potentially the opposite of accounting.
Well, now we know.
Yeah. So, because I get to interact with people all day in this, and I love this, but the other. So I just mean, I just wonder if in school or maybe parenting out, whatever, as a kid, if you focused more on like if you trained the brain from a young age to like focus on that, then maybe it would be the opposite of what it is. I don't know.
Well, and here's something really hard that I've noticed as parenting. It makes my life easier when my kids are obedient. Right? If they just do what I tell them, it's so much easier. But that's not imagination. That's not creating the future. That's just doing whatever you're told. And that's largely, like, the school system is largely historically set up that way, because if you're training factory workers, you want them to be sort of obedient and productive. So yeah, I agree. There is some systemization, indoctrination into conformity rather than adventure and imagination and creativity and all these things.
Mm-hmm. So for my own curiosity, how has having kids like changed you have 2 kids?
Yeah, 2 and 4.
2 and 4. How has having kids like changed your life as like a whole?
It's simplified it in some ways. I'm doing less. I'm spending, when I would normally have free time before, I'm doing a puzzle with them or something. So it's like, it does take a lot of time. And so the variety of my life has shrunk a little bit, I would say. But there's nobody without parents. And so it's like the most basic part of being human to, I've already been someone's kid and now I'm someone's parent. And it's just seeing, and I, also I was a biologist, right? I love seeing them develop. I love, if we bring in what we were talking about earlier, they're like an infinite soul, but now they're in this tiny little baby body and they can't even like walk yet, or they can't fully talk, and they have to acquire these skills of being human. And so just today, my 2-year-old counted to 10 for the first time, and it just blew me away. I was like, you didn't know how to do that yesterday, and now you do. It's amazing. And it's just, like seeing them discover things and right, becoming the full expression of who they're going to be is just such a fascinating process.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it is a must. Actually, not a must. I shouldn't say that, but I do think if you get older and you don't have kids, I think majority would regret not having them. Do you know Jordan Peterson, the psychologist? He wrote
I,
12 Rules for Life.
I'm familiar with him, but not his work really.
So he talks about that. He's like, you got to have kids, because he's like, as you get older and, you know, say you build wealth and everything, and, you know, you have your life all set together, where he's like, well, he's like, what the hell else are you going to do? You know, like, he's like, and I don't, and he means it, I think, in a way of like, you know, look, there's always more projects and there's always more things. You can always learn more. You can never just like be done, like, you know, but at the end of the day, I mean, having kids definitely, like you said, like, it's simplified things. Like, there's really no, like, have you been bored in the last 4 years? Have you ever been bored?
No.
Yeah. See, you know what I mean? Like I've been bored a few times. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've been like, but I don't know if the answer is like taking on more work, you know, like I already, you know, work a lot or whatever you want to call it. But like, so I don't know. I think kids is like, it's like natural. Like you were kind, like, it's like something I think you should, I think should is the right word. I think you should do it.
Well, I've thought about that too. I was like, everybody should have kids, you know, like it forces you to be the very best you can be. But if we go back to like, what are the lessons you're here to learn? Obviously being a parent and, you know, raising this family and all these things is an important lesson for me in this lifetime. But that past lifetime that I talked about, where I was the French trapper, he was never married, never had kids. And so it was a totally different life experience, equally valid, type of experience. So I'm on board with you. I agree that, like, I think it would enhance almost everybody's life to have kids. And it's also totally fine for it to not be in the cards.
Agree. So, but if you can tap in, I don't know how much you tapped into the French guy. Do you think he was happier or less happy though than you in this current like state?
I don't know. I think he had a lot of girlfriends.
Yeah, see, that's the cool part.
And you know, when I was single, I probably just tapping into that similar proclivity.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So when I met my wife, I was, you know, basically dating 5 people at the same time.
That's awesome. Wait, like polyamorous or what? Or just like
nope, just like at that time I was like, hey, I'm just dating, you know.
Yeah.
I'm interested in casual non-committal relationships. And pretty quickly, also part of the same ayahuasca journey, I realized, I was like, oh, this is my person. So the very first night of the ayahuasca ceremony, my wife was in it as well. I came up to her and I was like, I want to have babies with you. And she was like, well, the next night she was like, good thing you told me that, because we're pregnant. And I was like, no way. So it was like instant manifestation.
Wow. Yeah. For real. It's like, good thing. That's awesome. That wouldn't have been wild if you said the opposite. That would have been a bad trip, I guess. I don't know.
Well, maybe this will be my last story. This will be a good place to end.
Yeah,
but
tell me.
It was a multi-day ayahuasca experience journey. And so the first 2 days, amazing, beautiful, life-affirming, most amazing experience. Then I learned I was going to be a dad. And the last night was the single hardest thing I've ever experienced, because in order for me to be ready to be a dad, you know, a lot of dads like plan for a year or 2 before they decide to try to have kids, and then they're trying, and then but for me, it was just like instantaneous. Like, you got to be ready right now. By the end of tonight, in 8 hours, you will be ready to have a dad. Whereas before, you never were expecting to be. So I had to clean up everything about myself that I wasn't proud of, that I was ashamed of, embarrassed about, all the loose ends, all the things, the negative things I had done that would hold me back from being a good dad. I had to deal with them all at once, and I did not do very well. I was, had the cold sweats. Had full body aches and pains, vomiting, shitting, just horrible experience. And everybody else kind of like came down off of their experience, and they all went to bed. And here I was, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., nothing's getting better. It's so terribly painful, like, a migraine of my whole soul. And I was like, and I said, here's our theme again. I said, please, somebody come help me, in my mind. And the shaman woke up. She had gone to bed hours ago. She woke up, came out of her room and came back to the ceremony. And she sat down with me, and she basically like reached into my etheric body. She like put her hand on my chest and like pulled out a dark entity, like a tar that was in my heart. And she was like, I have to create this space for you. And so then it was like, oh my gosh, I'm open and available. I'm ready to be a dad. So she like cleared out all this, the last gunk that was sitting in my heart. She cleared it out, and I just collapsed on the floor, and then finished the night. And in the morning, after I sort of integrated everything that happened, well, it took a long time to integrate fully, but once I was sort of back in my body fully, I was like, all right, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be best dad ever. I'm committed. Here we go. So it was like, all the hard work of years done in a single night.
Wow. Dude, I gotta try that stuff sometime. I really do. Oh my gosh. I still haven't tried it yet. But
we're going down to the jungle later this year, so maybe
okay. I feel like you'd be a good guy to do it with, but just be prepared, man. I have no idea.
You never know
what'll happen to me, man. You might need to take care of me or something, dude. So all right.
Well, for people listening, you need somebody. So what can happen is when your spirit leaves, when your consciousness becomes disentangled and you're journeying, you need somebody that can help your consciousness come back seamlessly. And people that have bad trips and lose their sanity to some degree is because they were operating in the wrong context without a professional, and they treated it carelessly. So it's the most powerful, magical, life-affirming experience if you do it right. And if you do it wrong, it can sort of permanently change you in a not good way.
That's scary. I'm going to do it right then. I'll say that.
You got to do it right. Yes.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on the show, man. This was a freaking awesome episode, dude.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. We went all over the place. So.
Oh, wait. So last thing, I'll leave it to you. If you want to, where can people stay in contact with you? Anything else you want to share? It's all yours.
Yeah. I've got a show. It's the Derek Loudermilk Show. And I bring in experts in many of these areas. A lot of what I've talked about today, I've learned from my guests to some degree. And so we bring in an expert on how consciousness creates material reality, or how your brain waves influence your experience or your personality, all these things. And sometimes I do little experiments like the past life regression guests and stuff like that. So if you're interested in this stuff, going deeper in these specific topics, check out the show. And my website is derekloudermilk.com.
Perfect, man. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tyler.